Metal Mike here, and I'm joined by my buddy Brian, and we talk about the 10 best concerts we ever went to. Late 80s, 90s, first concerts, epic stage shows, triple bills, and reunions. It's all here. It's a fun discussion. Check it out. Well, Brian, welcome to the 80's Glam Metalcast, man. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm really excited. Tonight we're going to talk about the epic concerts that we went to. A lot of them are going to be back in the day, but some could be recent, but I'm excited, man.
Yeah, back when we had to wait in line for tickets and our concert t-shirts fell apart after one wash.
And you didn't have to pay a shitload of money for a meet and greet. You just had to kind of linger around by the buses and stuff, right?
I never did that. I never did a meet and greet.
Right.
I went to the concert, partied, wait till after the encore's done, and went home.
Yeah.
I really did that.
Yeah. There's one we'll get into it when we get into mine. There was one time where we were lingering around and we met somebody, which was kind of cool. But I'm not going to steal my own thunder. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, I got to throw a question out there, man. So I got a question from one of the listeners. His name's Jim. And Jim's in his 50s, and he's got a coworker that he works with that's also as a metalhead that's in his 20s. And he threw out the question. He wanted me to put it out there to some of the listeners to kind of get their feedback. But he asked, when you're ready to go to a show, and obviously Jim, if he's in his 50s, he big era of his life was no internet. So he's saying before you go to a show, do you look up the set list? Or do you not look up the set list? So I guess the kid that's in his 20s always looks up the set list online to see what he's getting. Jim would rather be surprised. So, Brian, I'll ask you, man, what do you think with something like that? Do you look up the set list before you go to a show?
I'd rather be surprised.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously with any band, they're going to play the hits. Mm-hmm. That's a given. But the deeper stuff, I kind of I want to be surprised on that.
Yeah.
A couple of my things, I'll say some of the deep tracks that came up, and you're just like, no way they're playing that kind of thing.
Yeah. I kind of look at it both ways. We went to go see Paul McCartney over the summer, and my kids are big Beatles fans, and I'm just like a casual Beatles fan. And I did not look up the set list because I wanted to be surprised. But I've noticed other times, man, like bands that I'm real freaky about, I kind of get like a kid, trying to sneak peek at his Christmas presents or something, you know what I mean? Like with Kiss and stuff, I've done that. I think because I'm such a fanatical fan. Yeah, I mean, I go online and I see what they played. So I kind of see both sides of it. I don't think it's really generational, where I think that's what Jim was getting to. Like, he's an older dude, so he likes it this way, and the younger guy does it another way. I think it can go either ways, and I think it some of it could stem from how fanatical you are about a band, you know what I mean? So, like with Kiss, I've seen them a bunch of times. I might want to know, are they going to play some deep cuts? If they're not, maybe I don't want to see that. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's the kind of thing that if you've seen a band a lot, you might look before you buy, especially with these prices.
Yeah, but also back in the day before the internet, you might have a band play a couple of nights in the same town. You might have a friend that went Friday and you're going Saturday, and you'll ask them, hey, what'd they play?
Yeah.
Oh, they played this track and they played this one. Oh, okay, so you kind of would know at times before the internet was around.
That's true, man. The topic tonight is going to be the top 10 shows, concerts that we ever went to. And, man, when I go back and I think about this, and I don't think I realized it at the time, but, man, grew up in a glorious time for music and for concerts. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? What do you think?
I totally agree with that. I mean, at my our age now, I'm like, oh, you have a midlife crisis? I'm like, no, because I just want to go back when music was good.
Yeah.
Back then, it always just seemed like there was a new band coming out, a new album from a band you liked, new videos. Something was always going on constantly, and I missed that. I just missed that. And then, of course, you go see them live, and you're like, oh, all right, this is what I like about this music kind of thing,
Yeah, and, it was funny because I think what happened, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, I think, we were younger kids in the 80s going to all these shows. Then the 90s rolled around and everything changed. And kind of the word on the street was everything that you went to and you believed in the last decade was crap. You know what I mean? Not that we believed it, but that was kind of what was being said. So then you kind of thought to yourself, well, I don't know. You didn't make much of that era that you lived through. But I think now looking back at it, 30, 40 years ago, it's like, wow, man, there's young kids that are getting into this stuff. They would have killed to see Motley Crue in the 80s or see, Poison in the, you know what I mean? So it's like we caught some epic tours, bands in their prime. Like I said, it was good, but we didn't know how it was going to be looked at today, and it is looked at as an iconic era, no doubt.
And again, it went through a period where, hair metal was a derogatory term.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it was like, you like that garbage? And it was like, yeah, I still do. And then you're right. As time went on, these bands, mind-blowingly, classic rock stations are playing these bands. Yep. And it's just like, now I'm listening to, a Led Zeppelin going into Van Halen, then goes into Poison, and then Nirvana. So it's like all blended together now kind of thing.
Yep.
But I know, like the mid to late 90s, it was like you weren't cool if you liked this stuff. And
no.
I stuck with it. I stuck with it. It's cruel.
And, another thing, too, and I'm not knocking the stage shows that come out today. They're cool. Motley Crue, and they did the big tour with Def Leppard. But if you kind of look at what's out there, it all kind of looks the same. You know what I mean? It's all screens and all that kind of stuff where, a lot of the shows we're going to talk about, that technology was not really happening for the most part. So bands either had cool, tapestries, or they had cool props that kind of identified with the album art and stuff. It was a cool era, man. Cool times.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one of my concerts did have a lot of screens though, so that kind of goes that.
There were some. Yeah, no, I went to they were it was starting to creep up in the 90s. So, well, man, I think it's time. Let's just jump in. Let's hear what your number 10 is.
All right. Well, before I start, I told you I had a criteria on how to pick what shows I'm going to put on here, and it had to have probably like 2 out of these 3, but it had to be a good show. The stage show, the how the band sounded, all that stuff had a cool story to it. Some of these got some stories attached to it, and some kind of the third one, some kind of personal connection to me with this show, and that leads to my number 10, which is my first concert I ever saw. That was Kiss on their Hot in the Shade tour at Nassau Coliseum, and I think it was the beginning of July 1990.
Yep. With
special guest Slaughter and Little Caesar.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I'm not the hugest Kiss fan like you. That's out there. But I knew even less at the time because when they had the makeup on, I was like a kid and really wasn't into them. And just going to a concert to see, I went mostly for Slaughter because I loved that first record.
Yep.
And Little Caesar, I was impressed with them, but really didn't know a lot about them. They had the Aretha Franklin Chain of Fools cover, but other than that, but going there, they had, the big Sphinx with the sunglasses and the pyrotechnics and all this stuff. And you're just like, this is amazing because it's the first show I've ever been to. But then you also realize people come for the music, but they're there to party.
Mm-hmm. And
you have the weed smell in the air. You had the drunken, passionate fans.
Yep.
And then at one point, Kiss is playing this, one of their more famous tunes. I don't remember off the top of my head. And my friend taps me on the shoulder and does the old point behind us, like, look at this. And I turn around, and in the nosebleed seats, kind of almost behind the stage, because they didn't sell those tickets, let's say a couple were in the middle of intimate relations during the show.
Oh, boy. Okay.
And you're like, oh, that's what this is all about. All right, we're here to party. I get it now. And ever since then, that's what every show has been compared to that, pretty much.
Awesome, man. That's an awesome. So that was your first. Hot in the Shade was your first concert.
That was my first concert ever. Yeah, because at that time I was old enough to drive. Me and my friends all had licenses, and we can go wherever at that point. You have absolute freedom to go to these shows then.
Yeah, man. Obviously, I saw this tour as well. I saw this tour in July. It ranks a lot higher for me than 10, so I'm just going to stay quiet on it for right now.
Okay, we'll revisit it.
We'll revisit. So, number 10 for me, man. Is the one and only time that I saw Sabotage. I saw him in 1993. This is when I was telling you when we were communicating through Twitter. This is the only show. I kind of went back and I wanted to see if I was right with some of my dates, time of the year, all that kind of stuff. This is the only show I can't find anything about. Like, this show does not exist, but I know for a fact that I went and it was real. I wasn't partying that hard. You know what I mean? But no, this show definitely happened. Maybe it was just a kind of a spur of the moment gig they threw together, so there's not a lot of info about it. But it definitely happened in the summer of '93. They were with Galactic Cowboys and Corrosion of Conformity, and they were touring.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were touring behind the Edge of Thorns album. And what I just remember the most, man, is they sounded killer. You know what I mean? I loved that album. I had been a Sabotage fan for a lot of years, and they sounded awesome, man. And they played a lot of kick-ass songs from the Edge of Thorns album, along with some other tunes from their catalog. The thing that stands out the most, went with a bunch of buddies, and I just remember the drive home just talking about, man, what a great show. It was between Zach Stevens and Chris Oliva. And from my calculations, based on, like I said, this was probably late summer. A couple months later, he was gone, man. Chris Oliva died a few months after that show. Wow. So I'm very thankful that I got to see him. Incredible guitar player. Yeah, that's why that one really stands out to me, because like I said, always was big into Sabotage, and like I said, that was probably one of his last concerts that he did before he passed away. So that's my number 10.
Yeah, wow. How big of a place was that?
Not big. It was just like a theater. It was
that's why you can't find the date.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I have some shows I don't remember what year it was, so I don't. I know it was there. So.
All right, man. Number 9.
All right, my number 9 is the only one that took place in a small club. And that was in '95, Dream Theater. They were unbelievable. Just the musicianship, I was blown away. And I'm a bassist. And I remember, at that time, I've only picked up the bass for like 4 years prior. And I'm watching John Mayer play going, I will never be this good. And that was something I strived for. And, almost 30 years later, I'm still not that good. I'm still trying. But yeah, just the way they played was mind blowing. Just sitting there and watching them just put this music together, and you're like, how? How is it? Almost magic at that point. And I went originally because a girl I liked went to the show, so I'm like, I'll hook up with her and soon meet her there. And I don't think I spent a second with her. Just watch the band the whole time.
Yeah, I mean,
amazing.
I've never been
musicianship again. Yeah. Unbelievable.
I've never been huge into Dream Theater, but anytime I've watched them play, it's just super impressive because you've got like virtuosos at like every spot in that band. So yeah, that had to have been a nice one to watch.
Yeah, because I got into them in college, and I just got out of college, and this is when the Awake album came out. So they were, I guess, peak popularity, as popular as they got. And I was really into them. Actually, a friend of mine from college got lessons from the guitarist, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head now.
John Petrucci.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I got into them over college, and when I graduated, saw this show, and I was like, God, this is mind-blowing how good these guys are. Probably one of, if not the best band musically I've ever seen live.
That's awesome, man. That's a good one.
On a side note, almost a little bit a year later, that girl I went to meet up with, she was my girlfriend, went to see him a second time in another club.
So it really stands out for you.
Yeah. Again, that's been a small club one, but again, the musicianship, phenomenal.
All right. Here,
your 9.
Number 9 is this is an oddball one because not many of this type of show happened. I want to say they only did maybe 3 or 4 of these before the album came out. It's Motley Crue, Generation Swine Listening Party, saw it in I can't think, is it the Star, I don't know, in New York City, man, in one of those ballrooms. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, 1997. It was the day before Generation Swine came out. They played the whole Generation Swine album, which was weird because I didn't know any of those songs yet, so it's kind of odd hearing them play that in full. And then I think at the end of the show, they played a couple of their classic songs. And I kind of went back on YouTube to try to refresh my memory of how this all played out. But it just had a cool vibe, man. It was just a weird kind of thing. I live in upstate New York, and my girlfriend, which is my wife now at the time, we got tickets kind of, out of the blue. We drove down there, saw the show, drove back. So it was just a cool time. For me, man, a lot of people don't like Generation Swine, but I do. Yeah. And for me, I've always been a big Vince Neil fan. I like Karabi too. And as we'll talk, that maybe something about Karabi will come up on this list. But yeah, man, I was I was a fan of Vince. I thought it was cool. It was a cool era. Kind of Motley's getting a little bit more of attention, even though this album wasn't big. You did see Motley kind of out in the media and on talk shows and all that kind of stuff again. So kind of cool time to be a fan. Obviously, they had no chance in the late 90s, as we talked about before we started, that this was a rough time. But just an interesting, oddball show. And just maybe helped me like Generation Swine more, you know what I mean, after seeing that show. But the one thing that stands out the most, this is the thing that I'll never forget, and we talk about this, my wife and I, to this day, is people toward the end of this, them playing the full album, kind of started getting kind of antsy, you know what I mean? And New York City, man, they were kind of crazy fans, right? So Tommy Lee's playing Brandon, right? The last song on the CD where it's a piano and just him singing, and he's trying to be all emotional, and I'm sure it's a nice gesture. He's writing a song about his kid, but here you are, man. You're in New York City, and the fans had just had enough, and they were booing. They were booing him during that song. And yeah, it was weird. It was very awkward. And then they kind of went off stage and took a quick break, and then they came back on and did an encore. And I want to say they did Primal Scream, Kickstart My Heart, and Dr. Feelgood. And then the place blew up and everybody went crazy. But yeah, man, just an oddball thing. Just it was a cool time. Kind of a weird. I wouldn't say it was a one-off because they did it like a couple other times in some big cities. But I'm glad I saw that show. It was interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Everyone went in knowing that's what they were going to do, play the whole album, the new album.
Yeah, it was like a Generation Swine listening party or album release party type of thing. So yeah, you should have known that's kind of what was going on. But yes, I tell you, as it got going, a lot of people weren't feeling the love anymore for the new songs, and they wanted to hear the old stuff. So.
Yeah. Play Looks to Kill already.
Right.
Oh, that's funny.
All right, man. What do you got for 8?
All right, my number 8. I'm a big Van Halen fan, my personal favorite band of all time. I finally got to see him in 2012, Mohegan Sun, so it was just like, yeah, everyone said, Dave's voice wasn't as good. He never was, to be honest. But
no.
It was still, it's Eddie Van Halen. I literally, I went to my wife, and I turned to her and said, do you understand you're looking at a rock legend right now? Mm-hmm. And it was just, again, David Lee Roth, the voice, all right, because people criticized him for that, 11 years ago. And without Michael Anthony there, you lost that Van Halen sound in the backing vocals.
Yep.
But, Wolfgang can play. There was no complaints there. And probably one of the highlights for me of that show was when all of a sudden they go into Somebody Get Me a Doctor. And you hear the opening riff to that, and I said out loud, I go, no way. And the guy sitting next to me must have been a diehard fan too. We have that passion for a band, those deep tracks that everyone's on board with. He turned to me and just went, yeah. This is great. Oh my God. So yeah, they were supposed to have like Earth, Wind and Fire open up for them. And the lights go down, And all of a sudden you start hearing that opening riff to Unchained, and you're just like, all right, it's on. We're not going to bother. I mean, I wouldn't have mind seeing them, but, I mean, it was Van Halen. Going right into it, I was completely fine with that. And it was like, all-time favorite band. Finally got to see them, and it was like, I mean, rest in peace to Eddie. I mean, it's just a shame that he's not around anymore. But that was like my bucket list concert to go see them. Because when I was a kid, when I first started getting to Van Halen, too young to really go to shows, and then David Lee Roth left, and it was like at that moment you're like, I'll never see the that original lineup again, and that's probably the closest I got to. But still, glad I can see my favorite band.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, that's my great.
Yeah, I kind of I've never been like a super huge Van Halen fan, but I do enjoy Van Halen, and I always love Roth. I thought Eat 'Em and Smile was great, and well, maybe that's about it for solo stuff, but yeah, man, that's a big regret. I really wish I would have saw Van Halen around that time that you did, because that was it, really. You know what I mean? They didn't tour much after that, so yeah, that's a regret, man. So glad that being such a big fan that you got to go see him.
Yeah, that was again my bucket list concert. And yeah, when my wife even told me, Eddie Van Halen died, like I was like, what? Because this guy is, just a staple in my life musically.
Yep.
Since I was like, 12 or whatever, and it was just, I remember for 2 months straight, that's all I played in the car, Van Halen, to the point, I think my son was 4 at the time. Dad, put something else on, stick it here with it. You don't understand, kid. You're not getting it.
All right, so number 8. I'm going back to, which was weird, is I thought this show was 91, but it was actually 90. Like I said, I did my research just for my own, just for my own peace of mind to try to figure out when these shows actually happened. And my number 8 is Poison and Warrant. So I thought that was epic hair metal bill. Maybe I didn't realize it at the time, what I was seeing, but in retrospect, especially now that Janie Lane is no longer with us, you know what I mean? I definitely saw hair metal history, man. And from what I've read, there was some disputes between like about Stage Room or something like that, and Warrant didn't last too long on that tour, but it was great. I mean, nothing super crazy sticks out. I was with my buddies. I remember like us playing games, trying to like sneak up and get closer. You know what I mean? Trying to dodge like security guys. I think that we can probably all relate to that with a lot of those, old school shows that you went to. But it was a great show, man. Saw that in Albany, New York. And, Poison had the laser girls and all that stuff. I mean, Unskinny Bop was the big thing right at that moment. And
I'm not going to spoil it, but I'll be talking about that one later on.
God, yeah. But I just remember it. I just remember being a great show. And I remember buying a bootleg shirt that was white that had both bands on it. I think maybe Poison was on the front and Warrant was on the back. So I definitely miss those bootleg shirts. I don't know if they're like a thing like they used to be, but like you talked about those shirts that fell apart or whatever. But those were always were always the best.
That one time to go to school with it on and show everyone, I went to the show last night.
but yeah, I can't remember like a whole hell of a lot about it. I just remember it was a good time. It was a great show, and I'm glad that I can say that I saw that show. So that's my number 8.
Nice.
What do you got next?
All right, continue with the Van Halen theme. My number 7, I saw Sammy Hagar for his 40-year anniversary being in music at Mohegan Sun, and I think it was maybe 9 years ago.
Okay.
Something like that. I don't remember. But he played like, Montrose, hits from Montrose, his solo stuff, Van Halen, Chickenfoot, and the band was killer because it was obviously him, Michael Anthony on bass, Jason Bonham on drums, and Vic Johnson on guitar. It was a smoke show. Oh my God, he was so good. Mm-hmm. And my only complaint was he played a lot of Zeppelin songs. Because he's like, I'm going to play songs from my career and songs that influenced me to get into rock. And he played like 5 Zeppelin songs. Wow. Like, I don't know. And of course, Jason Bonham had to play Moby Dick. So I was like, all right, you got it.
Right. Yep.
But it was a really cool show to see that those different bands play in one show like that. It was really cool.
Nice.
Plus, I'm a Michael Anthony influenced my playing when I first picked up the bass, so it was cool to see him live too.
Nice, man. That's cool. That sounds like it's a good one. I've said on here before, I've never been a big Sammy fan, but hey, man, that's cool. No, it's all good. He's a talented performer, and he still got his voice, so I'm sure he was still sounding killer then.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Like, it's like this guy's pushing 70 and he's still sounding like this. Like, what the hell? But yeah, he sounded great.
Well, I got a lot of repeat bands on mine too, man. So we're back to Motley Crue for my number 7. This one was July 1994, Weedsport, New York. Motley Crue, Typo Negative, King's X. That's a good bill, man. I don't care for the 90s. That was a cool bill, and
that's a great lineup.
Yeah, I have to say, obviously the openers were incredible. I like both those bands too, and I was real into them at the time, so it was working. I think King's X had Dogman out. That was pretty big for them at that point, and obviously King's X
never caught on.
Yeah, and then Typo had Bloody Kisses. They were just starting to pop with that one. And then, of course, I got to see, hey, man, in some respects, I saw history, right? I saw the one tour that they did with somebody other than Vince, John Corabi, and it sounded great, man. He did a great, if you go, actually, the funny thing about this show, Weedsport, New York, it's on YouTube. So if you ever want to check out that show, just check it out on YouTube. That show's out there. And Corabi sounds great, man. He brings a different edge to these songs. And then a couple cool things that stand out to me is one thing that was kind of cool, that bands that play this kind of style were trying some different things to kind of break up the show. And with the onset of Kiss Unplugged, MTV Unplugged, that's what I'm trying to say, is that Kiss Unplugged hadn't happened yet. MTV Unplugged, Crew basically kind of scaled the thing down and kind of just went to the front of the stage with acoustics and stuff, and did some stuff off the new album, and they did Home Sweet Home and all that, and it was that was super cool. A couple things I remember though. One thing was these people made a giant ass sign that said Vince Who on it, right? And it would. Once again, this just must be my memory, but the thing was so big that they couldn't even hold it up with these sticks, so they asked me and one of my buddies to help them, right? So I remember holding this thing and trying to get the band's attention, get Nikki's attention, and then there was this other group of people that were like pissed at us. They were probably drunk or something. They were like yelling at us, and they're like, "We love Vince, how could you do that?" And we're like, "Yeah, we like Vince, but we're trying to get the band's attention, And so that stands out.
Hey, you just have to hold the sign. Don't take it personally.
Right. I didn't make the friggin' thing. But then the other thing that stands out is there's another show that I went to probably 3 years earlier, and that will be talked about as we progress. And I just remember that show being a mob scene, and I remember this show being a ghost town. So when Motley Crue says, like, we were doing shows and nobody was there, like, yeah, that's legit. The same thing Kiss says that about, like, the Creatures of the Night tour. We were doing shows and place was half full. I never saw the Creatures tour, but I'm going to take Kiss's word for it, because that was what happened with Motley Crue. Just the bottom fell out, with grunge and the singer change and everything, and it was a different animal. And those new bands that they brought with them weren't helping, pack the place. So, but once again, cool piece of history. Was a great show. So glad I went to it.
Yeah, I never saw Crew.
No. Well,
never got the chance.
You could have a chance coming up.
When my friend had tickets, and he decided to ask another friend to go with him. I'm like, oh, you bastard!
Yeah. Well, Brian, they're still going, man. They're good. I think they're going to hit the States again in this summer. So you could go see them again. You might have a chance.
Yeah, maybe I'll check them out. Yeah, that's another band I was big into when I was like a kid, and just never got to see them.
Yeah. All right, man. What do you got for 6?
Number 6, speaking of repeat bands, is the only band that repeats on my list.
You love me through this, nothing you can do. You need my love, and don't you know it's true? So baby, please, get on your knees.
But it was Kiss's first farewell tour in 2000, so I'm at Jones Beach Coliseum. It's a great place to see the show, by the way. I got to see, in the makeup and the whole stage thing. So again, I was a kid in the 70s where I was too young to go see Kiss. Now that show is able to see them, what they were all about back when people started getting into them.
Yep.
And yeah, it was a cool show. Went to a couple of buddies that were big Kiss fans. Only downside, the solos. Ace is doing a solo, and it's like, what are we doing, guys? You're not doing drugs in the back anymore. You don't need to do this. Play 2 more songs instead.
Like they're dragged out. Yeah.
Yeah, because it got to in any show, whenever they have a guy doing a solo, unless the guy's really good and knows how to tone it down to an acceptable length, it's like that's when you go to the bathroom and get another beer.
Yep.
So, but yeah, it was really cool to see them in full makeup, for the first time, for me at least, and see the whole actual Kiss thing done the way it was originally.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you, I saw that show at Hershey, Pennsylvania, that tour, rather. The weird thing was, it was Ted Nugent opened, and it was supposed to be Skid Row, but they weren't there for some reason. Was Skid Row at yours?
No, I never saw Skid Row. I'm trying to remember who. Was that this? No, it was a different. I saw Ted Nugent at a different show. He opened for, I think it was Leonard Skinner, and I can't remember Zach Wild's band at the time. He was supposed to open, but same place. It's an outdoor arena, so it rains. He got canceled. There was only Nugent and Leonard Skinner, but I don't remember who opened up for Kiss if there was an opener.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because I was kind of bummed. I knew when it was supposed to be Skid Row on the time that I was supposed to see him, or that time that I did see him, but it wasn't going to be with Sebastian Bach. It was, I want to say it was with the Johnny Solinger guy or whatever. But yeah, no, they were not there, so I was kind of bummed about that. Never been huge into Nugent, but he was decent. But I mean, I was there for Kiss, so
yeah, all right.
Because I believed it was their last tour, like a fool.
Yeah, of course. So that's what all went. Like, oh, it's the last time we get to see Kiss. Okay. 23 years later, they're
still doing it. Oh, man. All right. Well, this is... I feel stupid to put this again, but I've got one. This is it. I swear. This is my last Motley Crue one. But this one has to be mentioned. Okay. Number 6. Motley Crue in Whitesnake, 1987. First concert I ever went to. Had to mention it, man. It has to be mentioned.
Wow, that's a good lineup right there.
Yeah. So Whitesnake, I mean, we got the full. They sounded great. They had the full band: Rudy Sarzo, Tommy Aldridge, Vandenberg, and Campbell with David Coverdale. They right. That was when they were just peaking. You know what I mean? They were real hot with "Here I Go Again" and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Motley Crue, I mean, come on, man. First concert, Motley Crue with the spinning drum set and the explosions. Yeah. A couple notable things that I can remember. I can't remember a whole hell of a lot about. I was only 11 years old, but I just remember my mom was really freaked out, and she kept saying that I needed to be careful. Even though I went with my dad, she was like, you got to be careful because... they throw beer bottles at these concerts and you could get hurt. And so I remember the whole time thinking like, there's going to be beer bottles whizzing past my head, but I don't even think they sell beer bottles at concerts. It's always cups, right?
For that reason.
For that reason. So I don't know if she went. I'm thinking my mom never went to a lot of concerts. I was only 11 years old. But I definitely remember thinking Vince Neil's voice sounded kind of weird. So even as a young kid, man, I kind of knew, like, this dude isn't that great live. You know what I mean? Like, I just remember thinking, like, he kind of sounded like a chipmunk. Or so. His voice sounded really weird, high and weird compared to the way it sounded on Girls, Girls, Girls and some of the other records. So even as a young kid, I was thinking, like, this doesn't sound bad, but it doesn't sound right. You know what I mean? Something was not right with his voice. So, he's just not a great live singer.
I don't know what cocaine is yet, so...
So, yeah, those are the two things that really stand out. But it's just, I think all I can really see in my mind is just like the spinning drum set, the red stage, the pyrotechnics. It was kind of like sensory overload. And the Crue was my favorite band at that point, so I got to mention it.
Yeah, because when I was a kid in high school, Whitesnake, I was a huge Whitesnake fan. And like you said, the 87 album, that was their big catalyst that made them big. But what I would always do, if I got into a band, I'd buy all their older albums. And I really got into like the old blues influenced rock they used to do in the in the 70s and early 80s. Yeah, I would love to go to that show in 87.
Nice, man. All right. Well, we're getting down there about halfway through. What are you doing for 5?
My number 5 was when I saw Metallica at Nassau Coliseum in '91.
Nice.
And that's when they just released the Black Album, and it didn't become this big huge thing just yet, but it was on its way there, and it was just them. So it was Metallica for like 3 hours, and they had instead of an opening act, they had like a documentary show on the screens where they came on. At the time, I wasn't the biggest Metallica fan. Even I was starting to get into them. And when they mentioned Cliff Burton, the place erupted for this guy. And I was like, what's up with this guy? I knew about him dying and blah, blah, blah. But then, once I started getting into the band more and started actually playing bass, I'm like, oh, this guy was phenomenal. Now I see why.
Yep. But
yeah, it was just 3 hours Metallica straight, and it was unbelievable. Such a high-energy show. And like I said at the time, they weren't the huge band that they are now, so a lot of the people there were hardcore fans.
Yep.
And it was like, practically except for maybe Enter Sandman and possibly one, the rest of the concert was deep tracks.
Yep.
For the most part.
Yeah, it's
awesome. It was, such a killer show.
I'm bumming, man. I've never seen Metallica, and I really, at this point, have no excuse because they come around a lot. Especially like on their newer tours, they've been around, and I guess if I could pick, I would have liked to seen them, back in the day than versus now. Yeah. But I think that's one of those bands where, I got to break down and just go see them before it's too late.
Yeah, because I saw them about a year later when they on tour with Guns N' Roses.
Oh yeah.
Again, they great. Guns N' Roses without a doubt, the worst show I've seen in my life. They were terrible. It was like, you went there like, oh, these are the hugest bands in metal in '92.
Yep.
Face No More opened up for them. We didn't go see them because we were too busy drinking in the parking lot.
Yep.
And then Metallica came on, killed it, and then it was a good 2 hours before Guns N' Roses came on.
That sucks.
If you want to kill a mood, let people sober up for 2 hours and then come out. And after every song, Axl was going backstage to change his outfit, and Slash had to play something to keep people entertained. It was horrible. It was probably the worst show I saw in my life.
Wow, that sucks.
But Metallica was still good.
Nice.
Metallica killed it again a second time.
All right, number 5. Now, I'm mentioning 2 shows on this one because I saw this tour twice. I saw it in July, and once again, I had to do the research because I had no idea when I saw it. I saw it in July of '91, and I saw it in November of '91. And it was the Queensryche Empire tour when they played the whole Operation Mindcrime album. What a freaking great show. Now here's the reason why I went a second time was not only because I loved Queensryche and it was a great show, but Warrior Soul opened up the second time. And I always loved Warrior Soul, so I really wanted to see those guys. Now I couldn't remember who opened up for the first one, and I was researching it, and I think it's Suicide. You go ahead.
I can tell you because it's later on my list. I don't want to cut you off, but that's coming up later on the list.
Okay, well, you can say it. Say who it is.
Oh, Suicidal Tendencies.
Right, Suicidal Tendencies. But I'm going to be honest with you. I have no recollection of her seeing that. I don't know why. I mean, either they didn't appear at the show I saw, or it's like, you just have blackout spots in your brain. Maybe that's just gone. So I don't remember Suicidal Tendencies playing ever. But anyways, sounds like you're going to talk about this too. I mean, the only thing I'll say about it is, this was one of those ones we talked about where the early 90s where a band was using the screens. They used a lot of that footage that they recorded for that home video for Operation Mindcrime. And it just was amazing. I don't know. There's not much I can say about it. They just sounded killer. They sound like the record. They played the whole thing flawless. And then it was like they started the show with just some random tunes, played the whole album, and then finished with some random tunes. I think at that point, at least one of those shows, they were riding high with Silent Lucidity. And I remember the place just blowing up when they played that. Yeah. But I'm glad that I got to catch that tour because that was probably the best.
Yeah, I'm trying not to say anything because I'll definitely bring it up later on my list.
Okay. I got you, man. It must be ranking high too.
No spoiler alert. No spoilers here.
All right. What's your 4?
All right, my 4. This one has a story behind it, but it's Ozzy Osbourne at Jones Beach. I want to say mid to late 90s, maybe 96. I don't remember the year.
That could be.
I don't remember the year.
Yep.
But me and my friend were hanging out at the bar, just to have a couple of beers, and he says to me, "Oh, Ozzy's playing at Jones Beach tonight." And I go to him, "Well, yeah, it's sold out, or whatever." And he's like, "We should go." I'm like, "Why? It's a waste of time. It's sold out." So a couple more drinks later, he finally convinced me, "Let's go scalp tickets and just go. Screw it. And if worst comes to worst, we'll just go to the beach and hang out there the night." All right. So we go get a 12-pack, go to stop at his house, get some ice and cooler, go drive out there, get to the parking lot, and there's like a 16-year-old kid, working a summer job going, "Oh, can I see your tickets for you guys driving in the parking lot?" And my friend's like, "Just go." So I just gun it and drive in the parking lot. Get tickets. There were decent seats actually there because the way Jones Beach is set up, you got the floor seats, and then it starts going to the stadium, so it starts rising up. So we had like the second row in those stadium seats. So they're good seats. And then my friend's talking to one of the security guys, and he's like, "Give me like $20. I'm like, all right. $20, he moves us up to the 4th row.
Wow.
And within less than 2 hours, we went from drinking at a bar to seeing Ozzy live. It was so crazy. All of a sudden, we're just like that. Because he started off like little thing with screams. Again, some kind of, they always have like some kind of creepy poem with a nursery rhyme about Ozzy. And it was like, holy shit. We actually were just not going to go see this show 2 hours ago, and here we are. Yeah, that was another metal icon. Glad I got to see him before he starts lip syncing with recordings and stuff. It doesn't sing anymore.
I want to say,
yeah, that was a really killer show.
I want to say I may have seen that same tour. I know I saw him in '96. I want to say Korn might have opened. Like Korn was just coming out. Unless I'm told. Once again, these might be one of those things I'm just imagining, and I didn't do any research on this show because I didn't pick it. But yeah, it seems like I saw him on that tour, and Korn opened up. Maybe I don't. I could be pipe dreaming, but yeah,
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you open for him. That black space in your mind. I have no idea if you even had an opening act. I could not even tell you.
The funny thing about that show
was scalping tickets.
The funny thing about that show was that my wife could never live it down because she was just, I don't know if she was just tired or she wasn't feeling the love for the concert, but she actually fell asleep at this concert. So she could never live that down. Like, you fell asleep at Ozzy, man. You're never going to be able to live that down.
Exactly. Oh, Crazy Train, ZZZ.
All right, so number 4. I kind of talked about this a little bit, where this was at the same venue where I saw the Motley 94 show, but this was 91, and things were still hot, even though we always talk about 91 as the year it started to all be over with, but not for this tour, man. And it was Operation Rock and Roll, Weedsport, New York. We got Dangerous Toys, Metal Church, Motorhead, Alice Cooper, Judas Priest. One of the most sick-ass friggin' lineups that I'd ever seen in my life.
Great lineup.
Yeah.
Wow.
And everybody was good. I mean, everybody was killer. I don't even like Motorhead, and I thought Motorhead was, I was in a trance. I thought they were great. And big thing, a couple things that stand out for me with this one is that Alice Cooper, I was hard. I've always been hardcore into Cooper. Probably around 86, I bought Constrictor. Remember, my uncle gave me the greatest hits, and then I just went back and I got all the old stuff. And just was at that point, my Cooper freakiness was on high. and I had never seen him, so I didn't really think about some of the things that he does, like that would maybe I wouldn't be expecting. So I remember there just being this girl on the stage taking pictures, and I mean, shit, 91, I was a teenager. I wasn't like a super young kid, but anyways, I remember really thinking that was somebody from the press. So she's just on the side, and then of course he grabs her and he chucks her on some bed, and she gets electrocuted. It was all part of the show, but even it was so cool. And there was another part where he went inside of these screens, and like the scene happens on the screen. So he was using screens. So the screen thing was starting to happen around 91, and then he breaks out of whatever was happening, and he runs on the stage, and then they all come out, and so he's fighting all these characters that were that were on the video. So just cool shit, man. I just remember that being just such a great stage show. Now with Judas Priest, oddly enough, I wasn't huge into Priest at this moment, and I don't know why, because I feel like I've always been into Priest, but I was not super into Priest at this point. And then I think after that show, it just won me over. I remember, digging back into Painkiller and then going back and getting the old albums, and I've been a pretty big Priest fan ever since that show. So, and Priest had a killer stage. Like you said, if you look, a lot of people just look this up on YouTube and you'll see it, but it was all this metallic lattice, and he came out on the cycle, and they had the lasers, and and they sounded killer. So it just a kick-ass show.
Nice. I was a big Dangerous Toys fan too around that time.
They were great.
That's a good look.
All right, man. Number 3.
All right, my number 3. You already mentioned this one. It's Poison with special guest Warrant and 91 in Nassau Coliseum.
Nice.
At the time, I wasn't a big Poison fan. I was more of a Warrant fan. Mm-hmm. And they were killer. They came out and just destroyed it as an opener. And then Poison came on, and I'm just like, just the show itself, it was amazing. And I'm watching this, and I went to myself, oh, this is why these guys got signed.
Yep.
Because just the stage show itself was just high energy, amazing. The performance was great. The tunes, it's like at that peak, like you said.
Yep.
This is the peak for these two bands. Just a killer show. I've seen them 3 times in total. It's like every 10 years I saw Poison go through their stages. And I also saw Bret Michaels solo at a golf tournament. He performed at a golf tournament. So there's a bunch of those. I could have picked any one of those shows. But yeah, this one stood out because this was the peak of these bands.
Yeah.
Where it was just unbelievable, just the showmanship. It was like, wow, this is why these guys get signed to major record labels.
Yeah. It's funny because we probably are catching shows that are almost like right after each other. Because like I was always going to Albany, New York, and then you're at Uniondale. So I mean, we're probably like days apart from some of these shows.
Yeah. I was on, right there in Long Island, so it's like right there. We're not gonna go back to like New Orleans and fly back to New York again. No, they're just going all the way through it all. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, we saw these shows within days of each other.
That's wild. All right, number 3. This is another one of those epic hair metal concerts that at the time you may not have realized you were seeing such a cool lineup, but Cinderella, Winger, and Bullet Boys, man. It was great.
Ooh.
It was so good. And I this is one of those ones where I had the year wrong. I thought I saw this in 88, but I actually saw it in 89. I don't know. I guess I didn't have my shit straight. This was the second concert I ever went to. So this was the one after Motley Crue. And I think where I was blown away is because, like I said, I didn't think Vince sounded all that great, but I just remember these guys all sounding killer. They were all on the top of their game, especially Cinderella, because obviously they're the headliner and they've got the, they had it together, and Tom Kiefer just sounded so good. But yeah, it's just so cool, man. I just remember you just have like little flashes of things you remember, and I just remember like the purple lights. You know what I mean? Like the show started, and they played the bad stream sis. I can never say this, man. Streamstress blues, and then they kicked into Falling Apart at the Seams, and it was just so cool. It was everything sounded so good. And in one part, he came down on the piano for it came up from the ceiling, and it like kind of floated down when he did "Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone." But one cool thing was, so I was just a wee lad in '87. I had to go to the concert with my dad. This was the first concert that I was allowed to go to without a parent. I went with an older cousin. Now my cousin is 6'7", okay? And we were just little tykes, I mean, we were probably in 8th grade or something like that at this point. So we're down on the floor, and we're potentially we could be getting crushed by some, big dudes that go to these concerts. But I just remember, like, anytime things were getting weird, my cousin, who was just a giant, would just push these people, like the sea of people, away from us. So we were all good. It just was like Moses parting the Red Sea or something. You know what I mean? It was like he would just push it. He was pushing that sea backwards and keeping everybody away from us. And we were kept moving up and getting real close. And it was nice to have that bodyguard. So shout out to my cousin Scott, who's 6'7". So good show.
Yeah, that's because I've been to a few shows in that same situation, like that Dream Theater show. I was standing next to a guy. He's probably a bouncer, probably the bouncer at the club. Big, huge, brolic, just muscular guy. And Pull Me Under starts, and they start moshing. And this guy's just shoving people away, like, get out of here. And I'm like, dude, I'm standing next to you. I want to enjoy the show. I don't want to get hurt. I don't have to deal with this nonsense as I'm watching the band. He's like, don't worry. And we're just sitting there rocking out with this big, the guy was just built, throwing, 100-pound metalhead, just tossing him like they were nothing.
Oh, yeah, man. It's good stuff. All right, we're getting down to the wire. Number 2.
All right, my number 1 and 2, I can almost flip them. It's really not in any particular order. They're both killer shows, but I saw, where am I at here? Let me check out my notes. It was David Lee Roth, the special guest, Cinderella, and Extreme.
Ooh, that's a nice one.
Again, Beach. Oh, yeah. This is probably one of the few times I went to see I liked all the bands, and all 3 of them killed it. Oh, my God, it was unbelievable. My only gripe with Extreme, they only got 45 minutes because the opening act, but that 45 minutes was high energy. Again, you're like, I know why these guys got signed. I'm saying it right now. And they toned it down for a couple acoustic numbers because More Than Words was big, and Wholehearted was I think the latest single at the time. Cinderella was epic. Oh my God! Just they came out and just killed it. One of the highlights of that show definitely had to have been Nobody's Fool. Just they had like those gospel singers doing the background. And just the whole stage presence, it was unbelievable. So I went with a friend, same friend at the whole Kiss concert thing, and same friend. He was supposed to take his girlfriend. She bailed out. I was like, "You want to go?" I was like, "Hell yeah!" And he was a big Cinderella fan. But and then David Lee Roth came out, and at the time I was like, "This is the only time I'll see anything close to the original Van Halen lineup." And again, the solo stuff, and he played a lot of Van Halen songs, just killed it. Again, high energy show. Basically what it was, you see what David Lee Roth can do when Eddie Van Halen's not holding him back. It's like crazy on the stage. But at one point they played Unchained, so you hear the opening riff. Again, you got those other passionate fans. I went, yeah, and the dude in front of me turned around and just went like, yeah, nice. Like, holy shit, a Van Halen dog.
Was it the same guy from the show?
What's that?
Was it the same guy from when you saw him in 2012?
No. But like I said, it was the same friend that tapped me on the shoulder with the couple having sex during Kiss.
Oh, okay.
He does the same exact thing. Taps me on the shoulder and goes, "Look at this behind us." So I'm turning around thinking to see some kind of, I don't know, rated X thing. But it's David Lee Roth in a full cowboy outfit, riding a huge inflatable microphone, just swinging his arm with the hat in his hand, going, "Yeah!" And you're just like, all right, like I said, that's what happens when Eddie's not telling you to tone it down. But yeah, all 3 of those bands just killed it. It was such an amazing show.
Awesome. Let me ask you this one. Who was playing guitar for Roth? Was it Jason Becker?
No, he was sick.
Was he sick at that? Time? Yeah, because I want to say he did the album, but I didn't know if he. So I'm not. I wasn't. I kind of checked out. I never liked Little Ain't Enough album, so I don't really know how that panned out. So did John Holmes do the tour?
I don't remember who it was. I know that what's his face that played on the album? He played on the album and barely got through because it was conditioned. He actually used lighter gauge strings to be able to play to finish the album.
Yeah.
He never went on tour with David though.
Okay.
I don't remember who he got after that. I can't remember off the top of my head.
And am I totally high thinking that maybe am I totally off, or did John Holmes end up playing with Ozzy and I'm totally out of whack here? Am I on the right track or not?
Well, these guys keep switching. You know what? That's the funny thing with Ozzy Osbourne, David Lee Roth, and David Coverdale. They always manage to hook up with these killer guitarists.
Yeah. Well, you know, man. Somebody in Russia, Singapore, or some Brazil are listening to this podcast right now, and they're screaming at this thing saying it was this person. So they know who it is.
You dummy, who's this guy?
And I want to take this moment to somebody gave me a review the other day on the podcast. It's always nice to see a review, and the review was, it's just I love this because it's just like talking to a couple buddies about, metal and just hanging out like we did in the old days, So it was just like I had that feeling of like how you just would talk metal with your buddies. And then the other piece of it that strikes me as weird is like, okay, so now two dudes can just talk about metal. And it's no joke. There's people that are listening to it in other, 14, 15 different countries. This thing charts on Apple Podcasts. So I just want to thank all those people that listen to it. I think it's crazy that it does that, but I think it's cool.
Yeah, good music is good music, no matter where you are.
That's right.
That's how it is. But also, see, the thing is, a lot of these bands are big overseas, too. Right.
Yeah.
So places like Japan, Brazil, this music is still huge.
Yeah.
Even Europe, they still love this stuff.
True.
Here, not so much.
Not so much, no. All right. So the last two for me are going to be of the same band, but just different tours. So my number two. I had to go with the Kiss reunion show. And this was in October of 96. So for me, man, this was huge. I never thought this was going to happen. I believe, I guess I've been naive a couple of different times when it comes to Kiss, but Kiss talked a lot of shit about the other members, you know what I mean? And I just thought that they hate Ace Frehley, they hate Peter Criss, they're never going to play with them. But I didn't realize that, money, well, I guess I should have realized it, is that money talks, bullshit walks. And when the money was on the table and Kiss's career was kind of going nowhere and they had no options basically in the mid-90s, this was the only card they had to play really to survive. So they did it, but it worked out to my benefit. Just like you said, you were so glad you got to see Eddie Van Halen play live, even though it wasn't the 70s or the 80s. I got to see Kiss full makeup, wearing the Love Gun costumes, and putting on a show that was pretty damn good, even though this wasn't them, this was them 20 years later. But, man, it was a great show. Was it? Now, the one thing I wanted to mention, the Psycho Circus tour, which was a couple years later. I saw that one, too, and we were closer for that one. So that was kind of cool because we got to see that show a little closer. But I think there's just something about that, seeing that first time, back with makeup, original guys, that just kind of rings out as kind of being a little bit more special. But all the times I saw them with the original guys in the 90s was all good shows. They were all good shows.
Yeah. Yeah, those mid-90s were weird for these bands because a lot of them were trying to find their place in music because, the stuff that made them popular in the late 80s, early 90s, that wasn't a thing anymore. And some of these guys went heavier. Some of them tried the grunge thing. Yeah, they're really trying to find themselves during that. It was a weird time for these bands,
Yeah. Just to piggyback off that, I'm just going to throw out an honorable mention. There was one show that we went to go see in, I want to say it was 97, and it was kind of when all these bands, it was a weird era. Like it was Alice Cooper, Warrant, Dokken, and Slaughter. So they had to do like these package shows, and at the time all of them, especially the openers, all had albums out that weren't all that hot. You know what I mean? Like Warrant was trying to do the grunge thing, and Dokken was trying to do the grunge thing. So then they had like these spotty performances where you get to hear some of that cool '80s stuff, and then you got to hear this like shitty song where Warrant is trying to be grunge. So you know what I mean? So like that show, it's like it was cool, but it just was kind of like tarnished in some ways because it was like everybody was trying to be the 90s version of themselves, so it just wasn't working. But I think with Kiss, it was Kiss kind of flipped the script, you know what I mean? So instead of Kiss trying to be grunge, they were back to like their old selves. They were as glammy as ever, makeup, costumes, explosions, you know, the whole 9 yards. So Kiss got lucky with what they did.
Yeah, because that was the thing with that David Lee Roth show I had at number 2. That was the tour where it started off strong, but towards the end, like they were canceling shows and people weren't showing up because this kind of music was kind of fading out. And with all the grunge starting to replace it, you can just smell it in the air that something was changing.
Well, just think. I mentioned the show I saw where Cinderella were the headliners in '89. Now they're an opener again in '91. So it just shows you what's happening, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, man. I can't wait to hear it. What's number 1?
I can show the heart of your eyes, so just I'll take you home. We'll walk in the shadows.
All right, when you said it already, it was Nassau Coliseum in 1990. Was it 91? It was 91. Queensryche tour when they did Mindcrime.
Yep.
A mind-blowing show. Just everything about it, start to finish, was just an unbelievable performance. Because, like you said, they sounded great. Jeff Tate's got a phenomenal voice. The use of the screens, not let alone just having them there, that implemented with the story of Mindcrime, done so well. I forget the woman who sang as Sister Mary.
Oh, yeah.
Did a duet with Tate on what was the name of the song? Sweet Sister Mary. That's it. It was just unbelievable. Even the songs before and after that they played, you know, stuff from earlier albums or you know, tracks from Empire, just really good. I mean, they even played Last Night in Paris. Like, wait,
yes.
Like, really? Like, that was one of the songs you're like, no way, they're actually playing this? I like this too.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be stuck out forever on the Ford Fairlane soundtrack and everybody heard it again.
Yeah. You know what else stood out was Walk in the Shadows. They played on that tour, and that really stood out to me. Is like that when they played that live, it really stood out. Like, wow, this is a really great song, and it made me go back and revisit Rage for Order.
Yeah, again, it's songs like that where, I mean, like you said, Silent Lucidity was becoming big, and that's something for the fans. You throw that one out, you're like, wow, okay. But like you said before, Suicidal Tendencies opened for them, and almost a similar thing. It was me, like 3-4 buddies went, my younger brother went, and when Suicidal Tendencies hit the stage, it was just a mosh pit in the front of the stage. We had floor seats, so right there. And the way the Nassau Coliseum had those rows set up, there were folding chairs kind of like clamped together with plastic clamps on the side. And when this thing started, it must have been a good 7 or 8 rows of these things just got pushed back. And it was just chaos. I remember me and my friends being like, all right, we got to run cover for my kid brother here. We're getting killed, and I have to go home. Well, I think to explain to my mom what a mosh pit is now. But I remember one dude, he got like the security get in there and started throwing people around, like, hey, knock this crap off. And one guy, was had his seats in front of us. He comes back, he's all bloodied up, and turns to my friend and goes, "Are you finished with that water bottle?" And my friend's like, "There's a little bit in it." He's like, "That's cool. Just give me that. I'm gonna throw it at the security guard." you're the one causing chaos. You think he's doing his job? Just enjoy the show. But yeah, that was the whole presence of the whole presentation of that album was unbelievable. And at the time, I was a big Queensryche fan. Mm-hmm. So that was just mind-blowing to see. It was so well done as well.
Nice. Yeah, I'm bumming, man, that I can't remember Suicidal, because I actually really liked I don't know if I ever bought the album that they were touring for then, but unless it was I always liked the album Lights, Camera, Revolution. I don't know if that was that might have been the album they were touring behind at that point, probably. Maybe.
I don't remember. I can't remember now. Because there was one, something the groove that makes you move or something like that.
Yeah.
I thought maybe that was the one. I don't remember you could be right. I have no idea.
It's all gone.
But yeah, it was utter chaos when it hit the stage. It became this chaotic mess of moshing and chairs and people flying around.
Nice. Well, number 1 was your number 10, which is a strange twist, but I got Hot in the Shade, man. So a couple things that stand out for me. This was, we went for a full circle. This one, I just remember this show, I always remember was the day after my birthday. So I know that it was July 7th of 1990 because I knew it was the day after my birthday. Something to be excited about, like it was like a birthday time period to go see Kiss. But first time I ever seen Kiss, and at this point, Kiss was my favorite band. And same thing, same lineup. I saw Little Caesar and Slaughter. Slaughter I was loving Slaughter at that time. Little Caesar, same thing. Didn't know a heck of a lot about them. Was into them a little bit. And funny thing is we did kind of linger around after the show, and we did get to go on the bus, and we met Little Caesar. So that was kind of cool. We were trying to meet Kiss or Slaughter, but we did meet Little Caesar, and they were pretty cool to us little young metal geeks that were running around back then. But Hot in the Shade, that show was so cool. Most people regard that as Kiss's best show without makeup. They really, I think their shows got kind of boring through the 80s because all they ever really had was the Kiss logo. And then when they integrated the Sphinx, the Sphinx they came out of its mouth with the lasers and God of Thunder. It was blowing smoke out of its nose. Then at the end of the show, the whole thing blows up and the Kiss logo comes down on some rockets or something. This is just a perception of how I remember it. You know what I mean?
I forgot all about that. You're right. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. So it was just a cool stage show. And I think for any Kiss fan, what level fan you were at that point, they played a great set and they intermixed. They really started to bring back some of those 70s tunes. They opened with I Stole Your Love and just played a couple things that they hadn't played in a long time. And that was super cool for a fan because I think a lot of those 80s shows, the set list was pretty stagnant. They played the same crap every, Fits Like a Glove and War Machine. And, not that they did play those on this tour, but they integrated some of those old 70s tracks that they haven't played in a while. And they had a super big hit out, man. Forever was huge. And then they had, I just remember the green lasers going through the whole building. You know what I mean? So it was just great job. And it was great. Hey, man, we got to see Eric Carr before, on his last tour before he passed away. So that show just always has just good memories. And, I put that as my favorite.
Nice. All right, nice.
Well,
some killer shows there.
We done good. Any honorable mentions or stuff that you wanted to throw out there that just didn't make the cut?
There's a few bands I saw in smaller clubs. Danger. I saw them on Long Island at the time, a lot of rock clubs. That was just a party. That was a good show. Saw Junkyard in a smaller club. That was a really good show. Bang Tango I saw. That was a great show. And I don't know if you consider it really hair metal. Probably not. But ZZ Top, the special guest, the Black Crowes, where they got booted off the tour for busting on their sponsors. That was a really good show.
Nice. Yeah, a couple that didn't make my list. I saw Manowar in '93, and it was so weird because it was like a massive snowstorm and hardly anyone showed to this club. Although, I think Manowar would have had a good turnout, because they were playing in their hometown. But, yeah, it was just a nasty storm. Not that many people were there. But they still did the show, and it sounded killer. So that one always stands out in my mind. And one of the craziest shows, because the story behind it is when I was I want to say I was 18 years old, I told my parents I was going, over to a friend's house. But in reality, what I did was I drove to Tennessee to go see Kiss and some Gibson guitar thing in 1994. And it was like the scab version of Fleetwood Mac opened it. Like it didn't have Stevie Nicks and it didn't have Lindsey Buckingham. So that was just, they sounded really cool and they were good, but it was just the whole point of I pulled off like a crazy scam and went across the country to go see the show. And Kiss were Kiss were in a weird period.
Like,
Oh, what? Okay, let me just.
went and then you got home, you faced the consequences, or did you say, I'm going to my friends for a few days?
Yeah. I don't know how I pulled it off, but like I think they were just glad I was home. And the crazy thing is, man, I want to say it was just maybe. Like, maybe 5, 7, 8 years ago, my wife finally threw me under the bus and told my parents about this. I never told them. I was just going to take it to the grave, but she kind of outed me, so I had to reveal what really went on. But yeah, somehow I pulled that. I don't know how the hell I pulled that one off. I'm a good salesperson, I guess. I was able to sell that one. And then I saw Wasp. Go ahead.
That's hysterical. Mike's been at his friends for 4 days now. What's going on?
And then I saw Wasp at a toy and horror convention in 1998. So real weird show, but it was. I was so glad I got to see Wasp. It was the only time I ever saw Wasp, but it was at some kind of toy convention. But they kicked ass. So I've been to some weird ones, man.
Yeah, I have to say the Bret Michaels solo at a golf tournament, that was kind of weird. Where he's playing, his own stuff and a lot of Poison hits. I'm like, yeah, Sun Skinny Bob, and everyone else is like, what the hell is this? My dad was with me. He's like, oh, he sounds pretty good. I go, wait a minute. When I was like 17 listening to this, you told me to turn it down. This stuff is garbage. Turn that shit off, and now it's good.
Oh, it's funny, man. But well, hey, this was a great conversation. I was so glad to hear all the different shows you went to. Kind of cool that a lot of them, like I said, we saw the same tours around the same time. So that was actually pretty cool.
I had a feeling that was going to happen. Yeah.
Awesome, brother.
Definitely, yeah, this was fun.
All right, man.
Well, thanks for having me on.
You got it, buddy. Good chatting with you.
Yeah, you too. Well, I guess I'll see you in the Twitterverse.
Yeah, see you on Twitter. Catch you later, Brian.
All right, have a good night.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Bye. Well, that was great looking back at all those sweet concerts from the past. Rock on!